So what we're going to do now is look at a mentoring case study. So an example, a mentoring case study. We're going to watch a video. Let me advance this. I think I asked for permission.
You're controlling.
I'm controlling, it says. We're going to watch a video, and I want you to notice how the speaker, his name is Grant Skeldon, how he uses Jesus's work with Jesus's disciples as a guide for the expectations that we should have as we mentor others. And there we go.
There's a guy that's the architect for Walmart. So much character. I wanted to get discipled by him. In my version of discipleship is not meet with me, it's follow me. And so I told him, usually business leaders, they're way too busy, they would say. That's their number one excuse. Business leaders, ministry leaders, just men especially. I'm way too busy. Here's the thing. I don't want to meet with you. You don't need to add me to your calendar. I want you to include me in your calendar. Do y'all get the nuance? Don't add me to your calendar. Include me in your calendar. And so let me look at your life. There's 4 sectors of your life I'd like to follow, if possible. At least 1, 2, your family life, your work life, your church life, and your private life. There's gotta be an area where I can just come and tag along and be a fly on the wall in your family life, your work life, your church life, or your private life. And so he saw it, he's like, man, I don't know if I have time, but if you would come into my private life, I like to run, and I know runners. They like to get up early in the morning. They like to put the stickers on the back with how much they've run. And I don't look like a runner. I'm not a runner, really, but I'm like, I want to get discipled by this guy, and that's what I got to do to get discipled by this guy is run, I guess, early in the morning. So he says, you'll be willing to run with me? I'm like, if that's what it takes. And so I say, he said, okay, meet me tomorrow. He texted me, meet me tomorrow at 4. Oh, man. Lord, do I want to be discipled that bad by this guy? But I did. I was like, all right. I also like getting challenged. Like, you're trying to really make it hard. So I go, show up to his office in downtown Dallas. He wants to run in the city at 4 a.m. the next morning. Wake up at an ungodly hour. Wake up at 3:50 because I'm not taking a shower. I'm rushing right there. Like, I'll just run out. I want as much sleep as possible. 4 a.m., I'm sitting out there. He doesn't show up. He doesn't show up for an hour. And he doesn't show up an hour. He just texts me and says, oh my God, I meant 4 p.m. Why would you think 4 a.m.? I'm like, my goodness, dude. Like, you're making it seem all hardcore and you're talking about 4? Who runs at 4 p.m.? But what it did for him is it showed him, which millennials or young people, you want to be discipled, you better be willing to move your calendar and your schedule and your location like the disciples did for Jesus if you want to get discipled. But if you're going to disciple a millennial, you better be ready for them to cut people's ear off, to fall asleep while you're praying, and sweating blood and they're falling asleep. You better be ready for the things Jesus was ready for. Because discipleship is a hard work, but it's a worthy work. It's not always the funnest thing, but it's so worthy to look and see your fruit grow on other people's trees. And I will say, and I'll finish with, that my generation desperately needs the wisdom of your generation. We have access to knowledge, but that doesn't mean we have wisdom. Wisdom, Charles Spurgeon said, is knowledge used rightly. So I apologize for any young adults that have maybe caused a negative stereotype, and I apologize that we don't always come off like we want to learn, but I would ask, be patient with us because we are a fatherless generation, and we are, sometimes I have a lot of passion that is like a loose cannon, but I'm standing here today not because I read great books or I'm just any of this. If you see an ounce of wisdom, I'm standing here today because men and women that are over the age of 40 or men and women like you guys discipled and believed and invested and mentored my generation. Thank you all.
So, what did you find interesting or useful from that video? What did you find interesting or useful from that video? You can type it in the chat or
Compromiso.
Commitment. What
Deseo
else?
de servirle al Señor.
Yes, someone also said, don't add me, but include me. Don't add to, be flexible, change the person getting mentored needs to change their calendar and their time to be disponible. How do you say that in English? Available, willingness to be mentored, to be willing to adapt, be flexible. Lots of good answers in the chat. I thought they were all great. Also be humble, commitment to be willing to listen any time of the day. I need to want to be mentored, interest and responsibility, a deep relationship with the person being mentored, be willing to be taught. All great things. Thank you very much.
So can we advance this?
Yes, we can advance this.
Thank you very much. So we wanted to, we
There's a guy that's the architect for Walmart.
Me.
So this video, I think sets the stage for, I love the phrase, it's hard work, but it's worth it. And I think that sometimes it's easy to forget the hard work part. And sometimes we're in the middle of the hard work, we forget that it's worth it. And we have this picture painted by Van Gogh of the sower to remind us that Jesus promises there are no guarantees when it comes to ministry. We are not in control of the fruit. We are in control of being a good sower and of sowing good seed. So we wanted to focus this last section on our expectation as mentors about the people that we are working with, because that is one of the most difficult things to manage. And we've talked about the steps that we need to be taking to be good sowers, but this is about our heart relationship to God and to other people. So the way we're going to do the content is you have in your manuals a chart
on page 8.
On page 8. And we're going to give you time to look at that chart. And what you're going to do is underneath the name of each biblical person, you're going to write a letter and a number that best line up with what Jesus did in his relationship with that person and the end result that we see listed in scripture. Now, there may be other things that happen in heaven. We'll hear the rest of the story. But what's recorded in scripture is what I tried to reflect in these. So take time and read through for each person. You will write underneath of their name.
Again, page 8 of your manual.
A letter and a number that best represents how Jesus interacted with them and the results or the fruit that we see in their life.
Where do they find the letter and where do they find the number?
They are in that chart.
So for example, let's say it was the letter to Annette, and you look through and you try to find out which number best relates to the person Annette and which number best relates to that person. So you'll have an answer like Annette 1A or 3A.
So take a minute and do that work. If you have questions, write us in the chat. And give us a thumbs up on your screen if you finished. We've already gotten a couple.
Okay.
Thanks, Julie.
At least 2 people are finished. 3, good.
So we will talk about the dangers to be avoided as we go through, and you will fill that in your notes. So let's go ahead and start with the rich young ruler. Someone want to put in the chat the letter and the number for the rich young ruler.
What did you choose? C5.
C5.
Exactly. Let him walk away. That's what Jesus did. He let him walk away. And the results, none that we know of.
So the danger that we can avoid when we follow Jesus' example, we know that Jesus loved the rich young ruler. And that is just a really interesting detail. But he let him walk away. And the danger that we avoid is feeling responsible for other people's choices. As we are mentoring, one of the questions in the chat came up, what do I do when the people that I'm mentoring make choices that are taking them away from maybe not only ministry leadership, but maybe even walking away from God? That wasn't a question in the chat. I'm just thinking. And we have had people that we have poured our lives into, who I remember when we were leaving after 10 years living in Mexico, one of the people who'd been in our leadership small group asked to meet with us, and he said personally, and he said through tears, he said, I am not the person that you have wanted me to be. And his life choices have showed that he's far from reflecting the image of Christ in his life choices. And we still pray for him, we still love him, but in terms of leadership, we have to let him walk away. So if we follow Jesus' example, that when people choose to walk away or not follow the path of leadership, even if we love them and we wish they would, when we follow Jesus' example, we avoid the danger of feeling responsible for someone else's choice, because we're not responsible. They have free will.
So let's look at the next one, the Samaritan woman. Go ahead and write in there. What do you think the answer was? D3. Wow. Yeah, Jorle, you were very fast. So the Samaritan woman is, in fact, as quite a few people were writing, like Dimion, is D3. And what did Jesus do? As you can see in these pictures, the photographer tried to put Jesus in a contemporary setting. So this was the photographer's idea of the modern Samaritan woman by the well. Jesus was willing to confront her. He went up, he spoke to her. As we all probably know, that was not something a Jewish man would do. Speak to a Samaritan woman, even speak to a woman maybe back then. But he talked to her, he confronted her with the fact, as she said, I am not married. He says, you're right, you are not married. In fact, you have been married 5 times and the man you're with now is not your husband. But surprisingly enough, we see a result that she goes out and tells everybody in her town, he told me everything about my life, and becomes the evangelist, as it were, bringing others to come and meet Jesus. So the danger to be avoided that we can learn from Jesus's connection with the Samaritan woman is about false assumptions, and that's false assumptions on the part of the mentor. Very often we see people that we think they may not be worth investing in, but if we've been praying about, God, who should we invest in? And God leads us to that person, maybe even when we don't want it. And if that person says, yes, I would like to be mentored, don't turn away from that, because this person might end up being like the Samaritan woman, someone who we would never imagine, maybe not even someone from our congregation or someone who grew up in a Christian family. But letting someone see themselves through Jesus's eyes, but his eyes are through your eyes, that God loves them, that God can make a difference in them. So the danger to be avoided is false assumptions. on our behalf.
And in this story, we see the importance of what we talked about, throwing the net wide, like going far out of maybe even our comfort zone and having our ears open. God, who would you want me to maybe mentor?
As one of my mentors said to me, but remember, when it comes to the Samaritan woman, another danger is that we are not Jesus in this case, and beware of that sort of relationship, man, woman, woman, man. That can be a dangerous situation as well.
So now we have the next one we have is Peter. A2. All right, people typing in quickly. Very good. So
good job, Suge.
Peter, Jesus allowed Peter to be sifted by Satan, to be humbled, and his natural strengths really had to be broken so that they were shown up as insufficient. And then his natural leadership strengths were purified, and he became a pillar of the church. So we're
going ahead.
Yeah.
Let me move ahead.
So the danger to be avoided when we follow Jesus' example of letting people's natural strengths be broken and then transformed is the danger is letting people lead out of untransformed natural strengths. My guess is many of us have seen examples of where someone has a strength, whether it's communication, whether it's singing, whatever their strength is, and they're maybe spiritually immature, excuse me, or maybe a new believer, and too soon they're put in leadership, they're put on a stage, they're given attention, recognition, but their spiritual maturity is not enough to withstand the pressure, the temptation, and then all kinds of people around are affected when they are brought low. So it's very important to see natural strengths and let them be transformed. And this is a process, as we see in the life of Peter, of time and of pain. I'm not saying cause pain to people, but recognize that those natural strengths need to be transformed. And where I really was made aware of this, there's a book, I know of it in English. It's called The Beautiful Side of Evil. And it was a woman who actually lived in Cuernavaca, Mexico. And she was like a faith healer with someone who was syncretistic. And when she became a Christian, people wanted her to use her gifts of maybe intuition, maybe even healing in a Christian context. And she said, God had to transform me because it would have been too easy for me to take what I was using without God and use it in the same way in the church, still without God. So people need to be transformed in their natural strengths.
And the next person we're going to see is John. Very good. Saeed E1. Yeah. Wow. You people are ready and fast. E1. That was that Jesus made John feel loved. He was the as he called himself, the disciple that Jesus loved, and kept him close by. He was there even through the time when Jesus was taken to the Sanhedrin. He was one of the few, if not only, that actually followed Jesus there. Then what results do we see in John's life? He became the second most prolific writer. He wrote more in the New Testament than anyone except for Paul. And he was also a mentor and continual encourager of the early church. John was a great disciple. And then what is the danger to be avoided that we can see in John's life? And we noted not looking down on John or others because of their youth. So from the fact that he died after 96 AD, so they think he died somewhere between 96 AD and 100 AD. And for that time to live to that age was incredible. They believe that he was probably between 16 years old and 18 years old when he was called by Jesus to be a disciple. And so the thing to be avoided is looking down on people because you think they're too young, maybe they're too immature. And again,
another danger that the life of John helps us avoid is expecting quick results. So John was young, but he wrote his most important letter. Well, we don't know. He wrote the gospel, but the letters to the churches in Revelation, he wrote when he was very old. And so some people are like late bloomers, and that's okay.
They take a long
time. So in this program, you might think, oh, I need to see results this year or this month. Remember, God is working with people through their whole life. And so some of the seeds that you're planting now may bear fruit, if it's like John, in 60 years. That's a long time to wait. But we have to see things the way God sees things.
And the truth is, when I was young, people gave my mother a book on how to handle the hyperactive child. And people would not have seen me as being someone to invest in. I'm sure there's still people now that would think the same thing. But again, that's why it's so important to take time to pray and seek who God would have you invest in.
And our last one is, everybody ready?
Yes. That's right. Chai Taram.
If
D4 and
if we were together, we would give some sort of prize for the person who gets it in fastest. So B4, Jesus continued to give Judas opportunities despite his treachery and his cold heart. And the results were betrayal. And I chose this picture because in a study that I was recently writing, where I kind of looked into the life of Judas, to me, this is the turning point in Judas' life, where when he saw the woman wiping Jesus' feet with the bottle of expensive perfume, and he was so outraged, he left. And that's when he went to find the high priest to turn Jesus in. And so what we see, the danger that we see that Jesus continued investing and giving opportunities to Judas. I mean, I would never let someone who has a history of stealing money be the church accountant. But Jesus let Judas be in charge of the money. We cannot evaluate our success by the fruit we see in other people's lives.
Because people have free will. We may invest in them and they may choose poorly, wrong, sinfully. And that does not mean necessarily that we were a bad mentor or we were discipled them wrong.
Or that we didn't do enough, or that we didn't pray enough, or we didn't try hard enough.
Annette has said to me more than once, sometimes I feel like the people we have invested in most, that we've mentored and discipled most, have turned out the worst. We have seen people turn from Christ and say, I just don't believe it anymore. Have children without being married and all sorts of other things. Some of them are still far away from Christ, and others have turned around and are doing beautifully and have repented.
So the danger for Judas is evaluating our success by positive impact and results in other people's lives. That's a danger, because we see that Jesus did not evaluate his success by Judas's choices. So we have gone through, and there are more examples. Yesterday, as Tim and I were walking and praying and preparing for this, we thought of other stories in Jesus' life, other dangers that could be avoided. Again, these dangers to be avoided, there's more discussion of them in the book of Raíces in a different way in the chapter on mentoring.
That book's only in Spanish.
Book's only in Spanish. But so the way we want you to process these the way that Jesus navigated his expectations of other people. He let them use their free will to walk away, even to betray him. He was not put off by either the natural strengths of people and letting them use those natural strengths untransformed, nor was he put off by what looked like just incredible sin, patterns of sin that could never be broken. Jesus mentored people in a way that's very different from how we often approach mentoring. So we want to give you time to process this in small groups.
So we will divide you into groups. You will have 35 minutes. So hopefully that's a good amount of time to work together. Oh, I'm sorry, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. I was looking at the wrong notes. 20 minutes. I'm sure Milton was going 35. 20 minutes. And what we're going to ask you to do is someone in the group either be elected or chosen or volunteer to write out the group's answers in a WhatsApp or some sort of document, so that it can be shared afterwards. And this will be able to be shared not just with your small group, but then with the other participants and future presenters and the leadership of this impact mentoring. So you'll have 20 minutes. And Annette, you want to explain what we're going to do?
So in your manual, you
On
have
page,
I believe page 9, you have what's the challenge, lessons learned from Jesus. So there are 3 things that we want you to think about and discuss in your small groups. The first is make a list of lessons learned from the examples of Jesus' relationship that we've just considered, and you can add others. I see people have been talking in small groups, and it's been really helpful. There have been some things that you can take lessons learned from the chat, but try to come up with lessons learned from the way Jesus navigated his relationships that can help us manage our expectations in a mentoring relationship. The second thing is, what advice would you give to someone that you train so they can imitate Christ in their mentoring towards ministry leadership? Very often, our best thoughts come when we're giving advice to other people. So have some time to think, what advice you all, from what I understand, are going to be trainers. So the people that you're training, what advice would you give them and say, remember, Jesus did this. This is a good thing to do. And then the third thing, and this may be a little polemical, but we'll see. I think it's very practical. As we look at the way Jesus mentored people towards ministry leadership, how do we, in the Impact Mentoring Initiative, how do we evaluate our mentoring if we can't evaluate it just on the success that we see in people's lives? How do you picture and describe the success of the Impact Mentoring Initiative? So you have those 3 things. Try to spend time on all 3 of them and write the answers down so we can share and learn from each other. So as Odalie wrote in the chat, you'll send it to the WhatsApp for the group. So we are now going to break into groups, and we're really excited to see the work that you do. Feel free to add from what Jesus did in the rest of the Bible.
we'll take a few more seconds as I see the numbers jumping up. We're at over 200 people now, over 300. Oh, it's fun seeing all your faces. I love seeing someone had a palapa, thatched roof over them. And I'm thinking, this is amazing. We're everywhere.
Someone else has a mountain behind them.
A mountain, yeah, Cesar. Nice mountain. Me gusta la montaña, Cesar. Okay, and they wanted us to remind you to choose your language again. Down at the bottom, it says interpretation. Make sure you choose the language you want to hear. It's usually in the lower part of the screen. All right. So what I'd like to do is someone in your group took notes. Anyone can share, but I'd like to hear from at least six different groups. One lesson that they identified. Don't list all of the lessons that you learned from Jesus's life and ministry, but just one. So let's hear from 6 different groups. You can write it down in the chat or unmute yourself. I don't know if you can, and talk. Okay, so let me see. So what you're going to do is we want at least 6 different groups to share with the group what they learned. El legado de Jesús a los 12 y Pablo, the legacy that Jesus left was the 12 apostles and Pablo. And Paul. See, thank you. Wow, I'm getting confused between languages.
Thank you all for sending these.
Yes, but let's hear from some of you. What was one thing in your group that kind of stood out that you said, this is something, a lesson that we learned from Jesus's life? It is not possible to, you learned from Jesus's life that it's impossible to turn on your microphone. I didn't, thank you. No, I understand. They're not allowing us to choose our microphone. So,
okay. He developed a knowledge of his mentee.
He developed knowledge of his mentee. He got to know them. Could you repeat that, Gabriel?
Si quieren, comparto 2 cositas que pusieron en el grupo.
I'm going to share 2 things that they wrote down in the group. To spend time with people. To show genuine interest in them and patience.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So we've heard from 3 groups now.
In my group, we saw that Jesus was an example of servanthood. You know, he put people above self, and he has a love that goes beyond the fault of people. He looks beyond the fault of others. And then the advice that we said, it says the word must be the basis on which we give advice. But also it's very important that you have the correct interpretation of the word so as to not to give wrong advice.
Thank you, Calvin.
And the final part was that by the fruits you shall know them. So basically my group was saying that result is important. So to say whether or not you're being successful.
Thank you, Calvin. Just remind us, we've heard from 4 groups. Just give one of the things you wanted to identify.
Hermanos de mi equipo dice que el éxito no depende del resultado.
In my team, they said that the results don't depend on what others did. Jesus offered opportunities to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think Ana.
Can you translate in English what was said in Spanish, please?
In my team, we need to allow people, the mentees, give them freedom to act, to treat them with compassion. We need to believe in them, and we need to also have a healthy relationship with them. In the second aspect, we must celebrate the successes of our mentees, to reward the small achievements, and to recognize that mentorship is not about having an easy life, but there will be pros and cons. And with humbleness, we have to teach them that they have to follow the leadership lines in the church, and they have to wait for the Lord
And
to
the
do
final
something in them. And the last one,
about what is
We're talking about mentorship.
It is very
It
practical.
is
The
very
content,
practical,
a relational
a relational
content,
mentorship,
not
not
imposed, but
imposed,
a
but a
relation.
relationship. Uh,
And
and with
also
the
with
mentees,
mentees, what
what we
we
sow,
what we
if we
sow, if we
sow
do it
it
right
correctly,
according to what Jesus
based on the
did,
teachings of Jesus,
we are
we
going to have
will
a
have a
good
good
harvest.
harvest.
Wow, we had double English translation. That was impressive.
Thank you, Anna, and your group.
Thank you. And Sharon, I see you. You'll be the last one. Sorry for the rest of you, but Sharon, and just share one thing.
Sí,
from your
gracias.
group.
Muy bien. Voy a compartir sobre la segunda pregunta entonces.
I'm going to share with the second question. We talked that the growth or development not only should be measured in a quantitative way, but also qualitative, because the development of character is a process, and we also saw that obstacles are not failures. Obstacles should not distract us from the route or this path of mentorship that we are following. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, and that in your group. Okay, so now you'll have an opportunity, another 6 groups. I would like to hear one answer to the question from your group. How would you picture and describe the success of the Impact Mentoring Initiative? So it was the third question, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the answer that your group gave to how would you picture or describe the success of the Impact Mentoring Initiative. Go ahead, Timian. Timian?
Okay. Yes. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we are in English.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I would say that the impact mentorship can have is coming out of it. It has the capacity to produce new offspring or new leaders. And we really thought about Jesus and his mission. And as he left the earth, how he was intentional about having his 11 and then with the Apostle Paul, how he was intentional about having them to be representatives of him as he would go. And so even as this impact mentorship has begun, we see it as producing new offspring, so that as the older leaders would transition out, they would have younger leaders, to continue the job and start it over again.
Thank you, Timian. And Angel, you seem to be the second one to raise your hand. Could you tell us what your group, how they answered that? Como ellos lo hicieron.
Saludos nuevamente.
Greetings to all. It is a privilege to see you all. I believe that a strong emphasis has to be put on raising a new generation of youth, and that means we need to understand and love this new generation.
Thank you. We agree, Angel.
And it's great to see you.
Leticia.
Could you translate what was said in Espanol, please, in English? Because we cannot hear the English. Translators do not hear themselves.
Our team thought that success is found in mentorship being a lifestyle at a personal level, in our churches, in the district, in all areas, so that we can guide others to make it a lifestyle.
Thank you very much, Leticia. And we'll take 2 more, Mario and then Rudolph. Mario, adelante.
Gracias.
Thank you. Our team, we were talking about that we cannot measure the success only in the involvement and in the participation of people, but also in the results that we will see after this, the impact that we will have in people through us, and the transformation and behaviors, ministries, the transformation of the context. So we believe that that will give us a way to measure whether this is successful or not.
Gracias, Mario. Thank you. Rudolph, last group. What did you picture or describe the success?
Our our team agreed that we just eagerly await the multiplying effect of the initiative, among our local churches, our districts, and in fact the region. That's basically what we are looking for.
Okay, can't wait to see the multiplying effect over time. Yeah, that's exciting. And to think about Jesus was 1, he invested in 12, and every one of us here is because of those disciples of Jesus. So it works, multiplication works. My father was a mathematics major in university and then became a pastor, and he loves numbers. That's just how he thinks. And he heard an evangelist talking, and this man said, which would you rather have? Would you rather have $1 million right now? Or would you rather have 1 cent, one cent of a dollar today, and tomorrow you get 2, and the next day you get 4, and the next day 8, and the next day 16 for 30 days? Which do you prefer, $1 million today, or doubled, 1 cent doubled for 30 days? And my dad, thought about it quickly and realized, it's better to have, because when you multiply 1 cent and double it every day for 30 to 31 days, it's way more than $1 million. And he said, just imagine if we all, evangelize one person, and then they evangelize one person, it begins to multiply. And within short generations, and the same with mentoring, we would see millions and millions. So I love hearing your excitement about mentoring and the impact it can have, because mentoring, discipling is the way that we need to reach the nations.
Well, what we want to do now is give you an opportunity to apply to your mentoring some of these concepts. Your brain may have already done that, but maybe the things that you have heard other people say, something has stood out to you that really applies to what you're going through right now. So what we want you to do is to turn back in your manual to where you hopefully have written where you are on the mentoring pathway. Again, in my manual, this would be page 5, but wherever you've taken the notes about the names of the people that you are mentoring and your work as a mentor. And we want you to take a minute and think about what of these lessons that we've gleaned from Jesus' ministry applied directly to the circumstances that you're in. So we're going to give you 2 minutes in silence to think about that. What is it that we've seen in the life and ministry of Jesus that applies to your work as a mentor and maybe to these specific relationships? May ask God to guide you, to give you eyes to see what he wants you to hear and apply from this section.
And again, that question is on page 9. It's question number 1 on page 9. And then you can go ahead and write an answer to the second question on page 9, which is, what is one thing that you want to remember from this session? This is just the thing that kind of sticks in your mind or that you don't want to forget. Write that down there. Thank you for putting the very good. I'd love to hear from a few people. What is the one thing that you want to remember from this session, session 2? Just briefly.
And session 2 is managing our expectations in the mentoring relationship.
What someone wrote here was Jesus chose a group of people to mentor, and
they followed his steps and continued doing what he did. So someone wrote, start small.
Start small.
So what are some of those things that you want to remember about managing our expectations in the mentoring relationship?
Jesus is the perfect mentor, and he's our model. So, and we have his power in us. Make Christ-like disciples. Invest even though
you don't maybe see.
Even though you may not see results.
Mentoring is a lifestyle. It's for a whole life. Jesus mentored his disciples, they mentored, and now we are continuing being mentors.
Give opportunities to people, even if they have a cold heart and they're traitors. Do not be tied only to the outcomes you see.
Consider the individuality of each person.
Mentoring is lifelong. Jesus mentored his disciples. Oh, you did? Sorry. Have patience and stick with it. It's not about size, but about quality.
Build non-judgmental relationship with your mentee.
Jesus spent quality time with disciples. We should also make sacrifices, necessary sacrifices with our mentees. And Jesus was never tired of reaching out to people. We should be consistent, though he did pull away to spend time with the Father and rest. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you all for your participation. We're going to move towards a time of questions. But before we do that, I just want to say that we understand that you all have a double responsibility. On the one hand, you are working as mentors towards, you all have the 5 people that you're trying to mentor towards leadership, to ministry leadership. But you also have everything else that you do, and you are going to be teaching this material that we have covered. So before we close, we're going to answer questions, both questions you have maybe about the content, but also real quick, does anyone have any questions about how to facilitate this session that we have facilitated? It is designed to be able to be done both in Zoom and in person. You all should have the facilitator manual, where maybe if you didn't take all of the notes down, all of the steps, it's all there in the facilitator manual and the participants manual. But does anyone have any questions right now just about how to facilitate, or questions that will help you facilitate this better?
We're looking at the chat, so if you have...
Estamos viendo el chat también.
If you have questions about
Si
facilitating,
tienen preguntas sobre
there.
cómo facilitar, pueden escribirlos ahí también.
Estamos escuchando español. We're hearing Spanish and English.
But you translated very well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so far, no questions. So,
well, hopefully it's pretty step by step. But if you do have questions as you're getting ready to facilitate, you can get in touch with us or with the team, with Milton and his team. So now we just then want to open up to questions in general on the topics that we have covered today: the mentoring pathway and managing our expectations in mentoring.
Excelente. Muy bien. Démosle un aplauso, hermano.
Very good, very good. Let's give a hand to our brother and sister for their excellent presentation, and sharing with us these knowledges that are such a great blessing for us. Scott Armstrong, you are here with us so that you can help us during this time. We're going to have a Q&A time right now, and we're going to clear some doubts. And so if anyone is ready to make a question, please, you're free to, feel free to write it down on the chat, or Team Yon is ready, and also Scott Armstrong is also here with us. They both understand English and Spanish, so we're ready.
So someone says, how do we deal with the emotional results when someone walks away when we have invested so much? I'm guessing similar to how all of us do. We are very disappointed and it feels like we have invested poorly. I don't have an answer. You know, don't give up on them, continue to pray for them. Jesus spent 3 years and Judas was part of that group and he did worse than walking away. I don't know. It's just, it's horrible. It's the same thing with kids. When you have kids that go a way that you would never want them to go.
I think one of the keys has to be forgiveness, and obviously giving it over to God, but and not holding on to bitterness. So sorry, we wish we had the perfect answer, but
if anybody
and other people can write in the chat. I think there was another question up.
Let's see. Thank you, Alicia. We're looking for questions. I'm scrolling down. And that says there's a question up above.
Nuestra hermana Gabriela tiene una pregunta.
Yes, Gabriela.
Has a question.
Adelante. Sorry. Perdona.
Thank you. On the contrary, it's just one comment. I see that also along in the pathway of mentorship, God uses it to confront us in our own spiritual life as mentors. In those parts in which we have not totally let the Lord act in our life, or in which we can be wrong or teaching wrong. Can this happen? Thank you.
And we also see the notes that say that the French translator does not speak Spanish and so cannot translate it, but I cannot hear it in Spanish because I'm hearing the English translation. I apologize. I would repeat it if I could. Annette, did you?
I did. Could you summarize the question again, please?
Sí, que en el mentoreo.
Yes, that in mentorship, we are also confronted spiritually as mentors, and we are confronted to change the wrong practices or teachings we are doing. And can this happen?
It will happen.
In our own spiritual life.
It will happen. I have grown more, as much through my own mistakes as I have through what I've learned from others. And so as a mentor, we have many opportunities to model asking for forgiveness from our mentees, because we are imperfect, and thank Jesus for his forgiveness.
And that is why in the list of things that we recommend that you do, one is be an honest and coherent model and guide. We don't say be a perfect guide, but an honest guide. And as Tim said, part of that is asking for forgiveness. And part of that is saying, I'm sure as parents, you do the same thing. I have done this and I should not have done it. And so ask for forgiveness and show a better model. And so I think this is a beautiful opportunity to grow and to be humbled.